Hi, I'm Steve Saylor, and here are the settings and accessibility menus for Diablo 4. Now, once you're at the title screen and then you press any button, you'll be taken into the login process for your Battle.net account. So you can be able to connect the game to that account. I won't be doing that in here because you don't need to see my account login information. But once you're done that, you'll then be taken into the first-time user experience, or we nickname in the game dev space the FTUE. Bless you. It's the, whenever you open up the game and you go through some settings before you jump into the game proper, that's what we call the first time user experience. So we have some screen calibration stuff here, and then we're taken into the first little menus here, which enables a screen reader in the game itself. Now, I would like to be able to see that actually kind of at the beginning before you go through the login process, but I appreciate that that actually is here right when you first start up the game. You can be able to adjust the screen reader volume, the speed, the type of voice, and then also how the screen reader interacts with the chat that is in the game, because Diablo 4 is a multiplayer game, and you can be able to jump into different realms with different players. So you want to be able to make sure that you can be able to communicate with them. Now, I do like as well that the large font scale as well in the visual support menu is the default. Love to see that. You also be able to change some of the colorblind options that are there, which basically will enable some filters across the whole interface for Protanopia, Deuteranopia, and Tritanopia. And you can also be able to set the colorblind filter intensity in case you don't need it fully, where you only need it a little bit, because, you know, disability spectrum, and not every sort of settings is an on-off switch. You can then be able to change the highlights around different players. So the characters actually, and objects in the game actually can have a highlight border around them, and you can be able to change the color of those. Now, it's specifically designed for colorblindness, but I actually changed these a little bit to be able to make it a little bit more higher contrast within the game. So as you can see here, I've changed the enemy colors to yellow and the objects to purple, which adds a little bit extra contrast compared to generally red as the enemy color. Now, once you're done that, you go into the gameplay options, which enables, you can be able to disable screen shake effects, or enable it if you want to. You can be able to disable the combat hit flash, which also actually can help out a lot. You can also reduce strobing in case if you're potentially prone to seizures. You can be able to enable or disable that. You can highlight the player when obscured, so if you're behind a wall, you can be able to see where you are at any given point. You can be able to swap the left and right sticks, and now you can be able to go into change the subtitle options, which actually works both in the main cinematics and in game as well. You can be able to change the font scaling from 0 to 10. I actually changed it to 7 here, and I actually will show an example of what that looks like in a second. But you can also change the default font color. I changed it to yellow, makes it a little bit more higher contrast for me, and I always set the background opacity to 10. This is what it looks like in the main cinematics.
Player interaction. Disabled. Certain cutscenes will pause after each line, requiring player input to continue. This feature may not apply to all cutscenes in the game.
And this is what it looks like in the game itself. Now, as you can see, there are speaker tags within the game instead of in the cinematics. Would like to be able to see the speaker tags in the main game itself, but understandable. Now, once you've done that, you can then be taken to the main character select screen. If you haven't created a character already, you can be able to go in and select the options here. Once you're in the graphics, you can be able to change all the stuff that you've generally changed in the first-time user experience. You can calibrate the brightness in the safe zone under the graphics menu. If you're on PC, that obviously will be different for you. You can be able to go in and change the volumes of the individual volume controls for ambience volume, sound effects, music, dialogue in the sound menu. Then you can be able to change the microphone input for when you're doing any voice chat. You can change the subtitles in here as well, and it does keep the same settings that you would change in the first time user experience. You can also be able to go in here, and I didn't mention this before, was the auto progress game dialogue, where you can be able to enable it, where you can be able to hit a button every time you want to skip to a new line, or you can just let the dialogue play out as you would any other in-game cinematic. Because Nintendo does that a lot. If you think of Zelda, where you can be able to have to hit a button every time a new line of dialogue is done, that's where you can be able to kind of similar thing in here. You can be able to enable that or disable that. Once you're done that, you can be able to go in and change the text-to-speech options for in-game chat. And this is also really cool. You can be able to enable the in-game loot sounds, which for any item that is dropped in the game, whether that's weapons, armor, jewelry, anything that's socketable, or anything else, you can be able to have an audio cue that is individually set for those items, so that for blind players, they would know that there is any of those items nearby. And you can be able to even set the minimum quality. So if you only want to be able to hear if there are legendary items nearby, you can be able to set that so that it's not so constant, where you're hearing just common sort of items that kind of drop, which is generally the case in Diablo. There is also an option for play audio on ambient loot, so that if there's anything that's nearby, not necessarily it's anything that's dropped, you can be able to enable those audio cues as well. Now, one thing I did notice now I've played the game a little bit, I wish that there was an audio cue library, like a glossary, so you can be able to hear what those items or what those audio cues are. But that's sort of a nitpicky, I wish that they would be able to do that, because that would actually really help and be a good quality of life for those for blind players. And then there's also play audio on targeting objects. Enable sound effects when an item or an object in the world is targeted by the player. That's generally for being able to see where enemies are. That actually can help out as well for that. And then when you get into the gameplay options in the gameplay menu, there are a bunch of the same things we see in the FTUE. Bless you. You can also be able to enable highlight player when obscured, show damage numbers, show all tutorials, advanced tooltip compare, and advanced tooltip information. So you can be able to always compare your items whenever you pick them up, and it will compare to what you already compare what you picked up to what you already have enabled or equipped. And I actually really do appreciate that. That actually helped out a lot in sort of deciding which items should I wear. Then you can also be able to set the HUD configuration. I set it to centered instead of left corner, which is sort of the default. Center actually is kind of the original look of Diablo. So I like that they actually have that. You can be able to kind of have an old school kind of look. But for me, actually, it works out a lot easier for me to be able to see on the screen. You can also be able to set the item label display. You can be able to have it show for 10 seconds, or you can be able to push the toggle on or off. I actually like having the labels displayed kind of at all times, so I think I have it to push toggle to on or off, and I just kept it on the entire time. You can also be able to set skill toggle behavior. You can be able to have it the same thing, push the toggle for 10 seconds, push the toggle on or off, or just hold all. You can be able to set hold or toggle for any skill toggle behavior, which is really nice. You can be able to toggle a channel skills, or toggle all, or set to hold all. And then there's also, once I get into the rest of it, you can be able to set the action wheel. I believe that's for like emotes and stuff. You can be able to set that to hold or toggle. Display minimum minion health bars. That actually helps me out, being able to know, okay, like, hey, what are they like for health? Because I appreciate the information anyway. That's just more of a me thing. And then you can be able to go in and change the colors for the highlights as well. Now, once you get into the controls menu, you can be able to set the controller vibration, swap left or right sticks, the cursor sensitivity, and the dead zones as well. Now, you can't remap the map screen, but you can be able to go in here and you can be able to remap the controls. This is on console, so this is not on PC, but so I don't know whether or not it has multiple inputs for each control, but you can be able to go into the PC settings and be able to take out that, but you can be able to change those controls within on console for Xbox and PS5. Next, you can be able to go into the social, which is generally how you can be able to connect with people online. You can be able to change the notifications as well as the chat settings again. And what's actually great too is that you can be able to get the in-game dialogue showing up in the chat box on screen. So if you need to reread the past 2 lines that have already happened, you can be able to do that into the bottom left-hand corner. At least for me, because I set the HUD to centered. I don't know where that would look. I believe that would probably look like on the right-hand side if you have the HUD set to left. And lastly, here is the accessibility menu, which I won't go into detail because we've seen these options in the other settings menus. This is more of a catch-all menu that actually really kind of helps if you just need to be able to take a look and change something on the fly. If you're disabled and you want to be able to adjust some settings that you may need based on your gameplay experience. And that is it for the settings and accessibility menus for Diablo 4. Now, before you get into Sanctuary, I would like to be able to encourage you, please click the like and subscribe buttons for this video. I really do appreciate it. It'll help keep this channel growing. And all right, that is it for me. I am now going to be able to go in and play as my sorcerer Kara. So enjoy Sanctuary, enjoy Diablo, and Mommy Lilith, I would like to be able to see you, please, and thank you. Okay, bye.